The autumn wind crept through the valley of Silver Ridge, Montana, carrying the scent of pine and rain-soaked earth. The town was little more than a handful of weathered houses clinging to the edge of the wilderness. For most, it was the kind of place you drove past without slowing down. For Cole Harris, it was the end of the line. He stood on the porch of his cabin, a solid frame of rough pine that sat against the foot of a mountain. His hands, scarred and calloused, rested on the railing. His posture was quiet, but guarded, like a man who never stopped listening for trouble. His short blonde hair was turning grey around the edges, and his eyes, a cold blue that once scanned enemy horizons, now studied the tree line with the same suspicion. Beside him sat Rex, a large German shepherd with a dark sable coat, and the kind of eyes that had seen too much. His right hind leg carried a faint limp, a scar from their last mission overseas. He wasn't just a dog. He was a partner, a survivor, the last living piece of the life Cole had buried. Cole's voice was low when he finally broke the silence. "You hear that?" Rex's ears twitched, head turning toward the forest. The sound was faint, a distant metallic clang, like something hitting a fence post. The dog's body stiffened, muscles rippling beneath his coat. "Probably nothing," Cole muttered, though his hand instinctively brushed against the spot on his hip where a sidearm used to rest. For months, this quiet life had been his refuge. After years as a Navy SEAL, after the ambush that wiped out his team, after the betrayal from someone high enough to bury the truth, Cole had come here to disappear. He fixed fences, chopped firewood, rebuilt what little peace his mind could manage. The rhythm of it had kept the nightmares at bay. Until tonight. As dusk bled into the trees, the sound came again, closer this time. Not the wild randomness of nature, but deliberate. A rhythm of steel on wood. Rex moved to the edge of the porch, growling softly, his breath fogging in the chill air. Cole stepped off the porch and followed his dog down the narrow dirt path toward the fence line. His boots pressed into the damp ground. The forest grew darker with every step. When they reached the boundary, Cole froze. Someone had driven a set of wooden stakes into the ground, each one marked with bright orange flags, property survey markers, new ones. He knelt, pulling one up from the soil. The tag at the top read Caldwell Industries, Phase 2. The name hit him like a cold wave. He'd heard it before, on local radio ads, plastered across construction signs near town. Caldwell Industries, the development company buying up old farmland and mountain tracts under the promise of progress. He'd thought they were miles away from his land. Rex sniffed the stake, growling again. Cole stood, scanning the tree line. They were here today. A rusted pickup rolled up behind him, tires crunching gravel. Cole turned, hand instinctively tightening around the handle of his axe. But the figure that stepped out wasn't a threat, just an old man in a weathered canvas jacket, leaning on a cane carved from elk horn. "Easy, son," the man said. His voice was gravelly, calm. "Didn't mean to sneak up." Cole exhaled, relaxing slightly. "Evening, Mr. Buckley." The old man smiled faintly. "Guessing you saw the flags?" Cole nodded. "They were on my property line." Buckley stepped closer, his boots sinking into the soft mud. "Caldwell's been crawling up this valley like a disease. They call it development, but it's just men with money trying to carve up what they don't understand." He paused, studying Cole. "You're ex-military, right?" Cole didn't answer, but his silence was enough. "Then you know," Buckley said. "A man can only hold ground if he's willing to defend it. Out here, that still means something." They stood together in the fading light, the forest whispering around them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Buckley adjusted his hat and started back toward his truck. "Watch yourself, Harris," he said over his shoulder. Progress doesn't like saying no. Cole and Rex watched the tail lights fade into the distance. The forest fell silent again. But it wasn't the comforting silence he'd come to love. It was tense, waiting. He looked down at Rex. "They're coming, buddy, one way or another." The dog's gaze didn't waver. His ears were forward, body tense, as if he understood every word. That night, rain rolled down the cabin roof in slow, steady sheets. Cole sat by the window, lights off, watching the dark silhouette of the forest. Rex lay by the door, head resting on his paws, eyes half open but alert. Somewhere out there, he could hear a faint rumble, the low growl of an engine that didn't belong to anyone in Silver Ridge. It passed slowly along the mountain road, then stopped. Rex's head lifted. A low growl rolled from his chest, deep and quiet. Cole whispered, "Yeah, I hear it too." Moments later the sound faded, but the message was clear. He hadn't escaped the world he fought to leave behind. It had just followed him home. And in that lonely cabin, under the cold Montana rain, the bond between man and dog tightened. Not in peace, but in preparation. The rain started just after noon, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the pine needles and turning the dirt into thick, slick mud. Cole stood at the back of the cabin, stripping the bark from a felled cedar log with slow, deliberate strokes of his draw knife. The rhythm helped quiet his mind. Rex lay nearby, half asleep under the overhang, his ears twitching occasionally at the sound of the storm. Cole had almost begun to relax again, despite the flags, despite the warnings. But peace, as he had learned too many times, was never permanent. The first bark shattered the stillness. It wasn't playful. It was sharp, guttural, layered with a tone that Cole hadn't heard since Afghanistan. The sound Rex made when he caught the scent of something he didn't trust. Cole dropped the knife and turned. Rex was already in motion, charging along the edge of the tree line that bordered the western side of the property. His bark had shifted now, short, clipped bursts that told Cole the dog wasn't attacking. He was warning. Cole grabbed the Remington from the cabin's entry rack. Not loaded, not meant to be used, just held. His instincts didn't care about legality. He followed Rex at a run, boots sliding on the wet moss. The shepherd zigzagged between the trees, nose to the ground, then stopped dead beside one of the survey flags. Another one. New. Cole's breath caught as he crouched. The tag was still clean, ink not yet smeared by the rain. That meant it had been placed recently, within the last few hours. Beside the stake, half buried in wet leaves, was something worse, a small rectangular metal box, camouflaged casing, claymore shape. His chest tightened. He didn't touch it, didn't move. It wasn't a bomb, not this time, just a mock-up, a message. Rex stood still, ears pinned back, a low growl vibrating in his throat. "I know," Cole muttered. "I see it." He scanned the surrounding woods. Nothing. No sound, no movement beyond the rain. Whoever had been here was long gone, or skilled enough not to leave a trail. Then he heard the cough of a muffler, a vehicle, maybe a quarter-mile down the road, easing away. Cole didn't chase it. Not yet. Behind him, the crunch of old tires on gravel announced the arrival of someone else. He turned, gun lowered. Buckley. The old man's battered jeep rolled up slow, windshield wipers flapping uselessly against the wet glass. Buckley stepped out, hunched in his oilskin coat, his cane tucked under one arm. "You see the new decorations?" Cole nodded. "Just found them." Buckley looked past him to where Rex still stood, stiff and silent like a statue. "That dog's got better instincts than most men I've served with," he said. "He saved my life more than once." Cole replied. Buckley grunted. "Looks like he's about to do it again." He limped closer, squinting at the mock claymore. That ain't just a scare tactic. That's someone trying to rattle a cage. Yours. Cole's jaw clenched. You think Caldwell's behind this? I think Caldwell don't get his hands dirty, but the boys who work for him, they don't mind playing in the mud. Buckley wiped the rain from his forehead. This whole town's being bought in pieces. Caldwell's got contractors, developers, surveyors, and, if the rumors are true, a private security team with more guns than permits. Cole didn't respond. He was watching Rex, who hadn't moved. The dog's eyes were fixed on the tree line again, as if expecting someone to return. I served with men like Caldwell in the Gulf, Buckley said. Wore suits instead of uniforms. Never got dirt on their shoes, but they bled people dry from 1,000 miles away. What do they want with my land? It's not about the land. It's about silence. Buckley leaned on his cane, voice lowering. You said no. That makes you dangerous. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the leaves, the roof of the Jeep, the brim of Buckley's hat. You got options, Harris, Buckley said, but hiding from them ain't one. He turned to leave, but paused with one hand on the door. Just be careful, he said without looking back. Men like Caldwell, they don't knock twice. Next time they kick the door in. The Jeep backed away slowly, tires spinning slightly on the soaked gravel. Cole stood still. Then he looked at Rex. The dog was finally backing away from the mock mine, but his tail was still stiff, his eyes alert. He glanced up at Cole, waiting for a command. Cole sighed, running a hand through his rain-soaked hair. Come on, he said quietly. Let's get back. They walked back to the cabin in silence. Cole didn't light the fire, didn't make coffee. He pulled the table aside and opened the steel locker in the floorboards. Inside was a locked case. He didn't open it. Not yet. But tonight, for the first time since he came to Silver Ridge, Cole slept with his boots on. And Rex, who used to curl up by the hearth, now slept beside the door, eyes open, ears twitching at every sound. The storm outside wasn't the only one brewing. The rain had finally broken, but the clouds hung low over Silver Ridge like they were waiting for something worse. Cole stepped out of the cabin with Rex trotting at his side, both of them moving with a cautious rhythm. The air was heavy, thick with pine and tension. Supplies were running low: coffee, rice, dog food, and propane. It meant a trip into town, which Cole had hoped to avoid for another week. But Rex's food bin was nearly empty, and the way the dog eyed the bowl that morning said enough. They took the truck, an old '98 Chevy with faded red paint and a cracked windshield. Rex sat upright in the passenger seat, head slightly out the window, nose twitching as they rolled down the winding mountain road. Silver Ridge didn't welcome strangers, even less so men like Cole, silent, watchful, visibly broken. As they pulled into the gravel lot outside Miller's General Store, heads turned. A couple of locals glanced up from their coffee, eyes lingering on the battered truck, then on the man and dog stepping out of it. Inside, the store was warm and cramped, all worn wood floors and the scent of ground coffee and gun oil. The shelves were lined with everything from canned peaches to .30-06 rounds. Cole moved through the aisles quietly, grabbing a bag of beans, some rice, jerky, and a sack of Rex's brand of high-protein kibble. Rex walked just behind him, close enough to touch, silent as always. But his ears never stopped moving. As Cole approached the counter, the bell above the door jingled behind him. He glanced over his shoulder, instinctively putting Rex between himself and the sound. A woman walked in, late 30s, olive skin, dark eyes that looked like they missed nothing. She wore jeans, boots, and a sheriff's badge clipped to her belt. Her name tag read Torres. Her presence filled the room in an unspoken way, like someone who had been underestimated too many times and learned to carry herself heavier. You must be the guy up at Calhoun Ridge, she said, her voice calm but edged. Cole Harris, right? Cole didn't answer immediately. He met her gaze, then gave a small nod. Sheriff Elena Torres, she offered. We don't get many folks buying 20 acres of mountain and then hiding in it. I like quiet, Cole replied. She glanced at Rex. The dog stood perfectly still, watching her without blinking. That's one serious-looking shepherd. He's earned it. What's his name? Rex. Her eyes lingered on the dog, then returned to Cole. Military? Cole didn't answer. Torres didn't push. Well, Silver Ridge might be small, but it pays to know who's living in your backyard. I'm not looking for trouble. Good, she said, nodding, because it finds people easy enough around here. Before either could say more, another presence entered the store. It was like someone had dropped a silk scarf into a puddle of motor oil. Too smooth, too clean, too out of place. Luke Caldwell. Late 20s, expensive jeans, tailored jacket over a cashmere sweater, and boots too shiny to have ever touched dirt. He moved like the town belonged to him, and maybe in some ways it did. Behind him, 2 younger men followed, smiling too quickly, laughing too loud. Well, well, Luke said, eyes locking on Cole. The mountain man finally comes down. Cole remained still, hand resting on Rex's back. Luke walked up like he owned the ground under his boots. Name's Luke Caldwell. My father owns Caldwell Industries. You might have heard of us. We're building a new resort about 10 miles out. Private cabins, lodge, ski trails. Real top shelf. I've heard, Cole said flatly. Luke smiled, a little too wide. Your land's right in the path of our secondary access road. I had our acquisition team reach out. No response. Wasn't interested. Luke's smile dropped half a degree. Everyone's got a price, Mr. Harris. I'm not selling. For a moment, silence stretched too long. The clerk behind the counter looked down, pretending to arrange something that didn't need arranging. One of Luke's companions shifted, like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or brace. Luke leaned in a fraction. You think a guy like you, off the grid, living with a crippled dog and a stack of canned beans, can really hold off what's coming? Rex took a step forward, the sound, from his throat low and deadly. He didn't bark. He didn't lunge. He simply stood between Cole and Luke, ears flat, teeth just barely showing. Sheriff Torres stepped between them. That's enough, she said, voice hard. Luke raised his hands in mock surrender. Relax, Sheriff. Just making conversation. Torres didn't move. Then make it somewhere else. Luke turned, chuckled, and walked out without another word. The 2 others followed. The bell jingled again. The tension didn't leave with them. Torres looked at Cole. You might have just made yourself a target. Cole looked down at Rex, who had returned to his calm, steady posture, but his eyes never left the door. I've been one before, Cole said quietly. Torres studied him, then nodded. That dog of yours, he wasn't just trained, he was built for war. Cole nodded once. So was I. Outside, the sky was clearing, but the town felt darker than ever. Cole loaded the supplies into the truck. Rex jumped in after him, head high, nose to the wind. As they pulled away from the store, Sheriff Torres watched them go, something sharp settling behind her eyes. This wasn't just a stranger with a dog. This was a man who knew what it meant to hold the line, and a dog who had no intention of letting that line be crossed. The afternoon sun sat low behind the mountains, the light cutting sharp and gold across the clearing. Cole swung the axe into a cedar log, the thud echoing through the valley. He wiped the sweat from his neck with the back of his sleeve. The air was crisp, the kind that tasted like pine and distance. Rex lay nearby, stretched out but alert. Every few seconds his ears twitched towards the tree line, tracking sounds Cole couldn't hear. The quiet was peaceful in the way only isolation could be. Then the peace cracked. Engines. The sound came first as a faint hum, then grew into a roar that tore through the stillness. Cole straightened, his muscles tightening. The noise was familiar. Dirt bikes, more than one. Rex shot to his feet, tail stiff, a growl rising from his chest. Cole dropped the axe. "Easy," he said softly. But Rex was already moving, head low, hackles raised. The engines grew louder, cutting through the timberline. Moments later, 3 bikes burst into view, mud splattered, roaring across Cole's land like they owned it. Cody, Tanner, and Miles, Luke Caldwell's crew, sons of the Valley's most arrogant men. They weren't there to ride. They were there to provoke. Cody, the ringleader, slowed first. He was young, maybe 20, with a sneer too practiced for his age. "Look who's home," he shouted over the engines. The mountain ghost himself. Cole didn't move. He stood still, expression unreadable. "You're trespassing." Cody smirked. "Didn't see your name on the dirt." Rex stepped forward, growl deepening. Tanner laughed. "Whoa, easy, soldier boy. Call off your mutt." Cole's tone was even. "Leave! Now!" Miles revved his engine, sending a spray of gravel towards them. One rock hit Rex's paw. The shepherd didn't flinch, but his eyes locked on the rider. Cody swung off his bike, pulling off his helmet. "You got a lot of nerve, old man. My father says this land's ours sooner or later. Thought we'd come say hi before the papers make it official." Cole didn't answer. He saw what they were doing, the cameras on their helmets, the smirks. They wanted a reaction. Rex moved between Cole and Cody, the air tight with tension. Cody looked down at the dog and laughed. "You think this old war dog's gonna save you?" He picked up a broken branch and snapped it in half like a show of strength. "You're not in the Navy anymore, Harris. This ain't your war." Cole's voice dropped low. "You should leave while you still can." Tanner rolled his eyes. "You hear that? He's threatening us." Cody's grin widened. "Let's see if the dog's got any fight left." He swung the stick toward Rex. The shepherd lunged, stopping just short of contact, barking once, a deep, guttural sound that shook the trees. Cody stumbled back, startled. Then his fear twisted into anger. He raised the stick again and struck. The sound was sickening. A dull crack followed by Rex's yelp that echoed through the woods. Cole shouted, moving forward, but Miles revved his bike and cut him off, spraying mud and gravel. Cody swung again. Rex dropped, legs folding under him. Blood streaked his fur. Cole lunged past the bike, shoving Miles aside. "Enough!" he roared. His voice was no longer calm. It was the voice of a soldier waking up. Cody froze for half a second, eyes wide, then smirked again. "Relax, hero. It's just a dog." He spat near Rex's body and motioned to the others. "Let's go. The show's over." Engines roared back to life. The bikes peeled away, spitting mud as they disappeared into the trees, leaving tire marks across the clearing. Cole dropped to his knees beside Rex. The dog was still breathing, shallow, wet gasps. Blood trickled down his muzzle into the dirt. Cole pressed his hand to the wound, voice shaking. "Stay with me, boy. You're all right. You're gonna be all right." Rex's eyes fluttered open. Even through the pain, there was no panic, only trust. He tried to lift his head, failed, and let it fall again. Cole tore a piece of his flannel shirt, wrapping it tight around the wound. He checked his pulse. Weak, but there. He lifted the dog into his arms, the weight heavy but familiar, and started toward the cabin. Halfway there, Rex stirred weakly, a soft whine rising from his throat. Cole whispered, "Don't you quit on me. Not after everything we've survived." At the cabin, he laid Rex on the floor, grabbed a towel, water, antiseptic. His hands moved fast, trained, methodical, but his breath trembled. He cleaned the wound, pressed gauze, and tried to steady the bleeding. Rex's breathing slowed. uneven. Then, through the open door, Cole heard something. A faint laugh, carried by the wind. He looked out toward the ridge. The bikes were gone, but he could still see the tire tracks leading toward the creek. And something else. A smear of blood in the snow. He followed it down to the edge of the water, heart pounding. There, half submerged in the icy current, lay the stick Cody had used, its end wrapped in red. Cole picked it up, stared at it for a long moment, then snapped it in two. When he turned back toward the cabin, the world around him felt smaller, colder. The quiet that followed wasn't peace. It was a warning. And somewhere inside that silence, a part of Cole Harris, the one that had promised never to go back to war, finally broke. The rain had returned with a vengeance. Sheets of it blurred the windshield as Cole gripped the wheel, his knuckles white, breath sharp through his nose. The truck's old engine groaned on every turn of the mountain road, but he pushed it harder, faster. Every second mattered. Rex lay across the back seat, wrapped in every blanket Cole had, his breathing ragged, shallow. Blood still seeped through the bandages. Every bump in the road made the dog whimper, and every whimper cut through Cole like a knife. He wasn't going to the town vet. That place was too close to Caldwell. Too many eyes, too many questions. Instead, he aimed for the only person he trusted with something this sacred, Dr. Mara Levin. Her clinic sat at the edge of Havens Hollow, 20 miles down the mountain. No sign, no neon, just a squat concrete building with barred windows and floodlights that buzzed faintly in the storm. Cole skidded into the gravel lot, barely stopping the truck before he was out, scooping Rex gently into his arms. He pushed through the clinic doors, soaked to the bone, breath heaving. "Mara!" From the back, a sharp voice cut through the dim. "In here. What happened?" She appeared within seconds, slim, mid-40s, face carved by hard years and hard choices. Her grey hair was tied back in a no-nonsense braid, and her hands were already gloved. Rex whimpered once. That was all. Mara's eyes softened, then hardened. "Surgical table now." Cole didn't speak. He moved. She followed, rolling a tray of tools beside them. Within seconds, she was assessing, touching, checking reflexes, breath rates. Head trauma, blunt force, fractured zygomatic arch, maybe worse, swelling already starting, hearts fluttering. Cole hovered behind her, dripping rain onto the floor. "Can you save him?" She didn't look up. "If he makes it through the night, it's because he chooses to." A silence fell between them. Then she added, quieter, "This dog isn't just any K9, is he?" Cole's voice cracked. "He's my team." Mara nodded once. "Then we fight." She slid a needle into Rex's vein, injected a cocktail of sedatives and anti-inflammatories, then moved to prep for the skull tap. The clinic lights hummed low. Outside, thunder cracked over the hills. Cole couldn't watch. He backed into the hall and sank into one of the cold plastic chairs, hands shaking, jaw clenched. Rex had followed him through war, into darkness, across continents. He had never once disobeyed, never once flinched. He'd saved Cole's life more times than any human ever had. And now he was fighting alone on a steel table because of 3 boys who didn't know what they'd awakened. No, not boys, weapons, tools, used by someone who wanted a message delivered. Cole knew the difference between random cruelty and a targeted threat. This wasn't about a dog. It was about power, control, fear, and it was personal. He pulled a small black case from his coat pocket, flipped it open, and removed a burner phone. Inside, under the battery, was a single card, 1 number, no name. He dialed. The line clicked twice. A voice answered, calm, quiet. "Thought I'd hear from you eventually." Cole exhaled. "They hurt him, Rook." A pause. Not a breath. A shift in the air. Rex? Yeah. How bad? He's on a table right now, head caved in. If he makes it, it'll be a miracle. Another pause. Then, they declared war, Cole. Mason Delaney, callsign Rook, was the last man left from Cole's original unit. Tech specialist. Ghost walker. The one who dragged Cole out of a burning alley in Kandahar with 2 bullets in his leg and fire in his eyes. Cole hadn't spoken to him in 3 years. Caldwell? Rook asked. Not directly, but it smells like him. Then it ain't just about land anymore. No, Cole said. It's about leverage. They think hurting him breaks me. Rook's tone darkened. Then they don't know what you become when you break. Silence pulsed between them. Send me your coordinates, Rook said. Cole hesitated. This isn't your fight. It is now. I don't care about your land, your ghosts, or the politics, but if they put that dog in the dirt, I'm bringing a shovel, and not for burying him. Cole swallowed hard. Storm's already rolling. Rook said, You just say when. Cole ended the call. His hands fell to his lap. His head dropped. Inside the operating room, he heard Mara mutter to herself, then the soft click of metal against glass. She was still working. He stood and walked to the glass, watching Rex's chest rise and fall under a thick blue blanket. For a second, just 1 second, the room felt like it had years ago, before the ambush, before the blood and silence and betrayal. Cole leaned his forehead against the cool glass. You don't quit, he whispered. Not now. Not after everything. You hold the line, Rex. Behind him, the storm beat against the roof, and somewhere, far off, something colder than rain began to move. The rain had tapered off, leaving the forest wrapped in fog and silence. Cole's boots crunched on the gravel as he stepped out of the truck and approached the cabin. The front light was off. The trees stood still, but his instincts told him someone was already inside. He pushed the door open slowly. A man sat at the wooden table, hunched over a rugged laptop, steam rising from a half-full mug of black coffee. Mason Rook Delaney looked up. His beard was thicker, his eyes more tired, but that calm, calculating energy was the same. He didn't smile, didn't stand. Just nodded once. Nice setup, he said. You booby-trapped the ridge? 2 layers, Cole replied. Motion sensors, pressure plates. Rook tapped a key. Still predictable. I was tired of hiding, Cole said, stepping inside. Rex? Sleeping. Rook said. Vet said he made it through the worst. Still rough, but he's a fighter. Cole exhaled. His chest ached with something he wouldn't name. Then he moved to the screen, where encrypted files scrolled fast. Images, emails, logistics manifests. Rook didn't waste time. 3 months ago, he began, I started tracking flagged shipments routed through Montana under fake development contracts. Paperwork said building materials, cement, steel. But the weights were off. Contents mismatched. 1 crate supposedly full of tile came up hot on a radiation scan. Cole narrowed his eyes. What was in it? Sensor packages, advanced targeting modules, stolen from a NATO facility outside Brussels. Classified hardware. He clicked. A blurry photo loaded. Steel crates offloaded from a flatbed near a dark warehouse. The side of the container bore the faint logo. Caldwell Industries. Caldwell's fronting the logistics, but he's not the architect. Rook continued. He's the puppet. The guy pulling strings is still in the shadows. Cole leaned closer. How deep? Government deep. Remember Foxtrot 6, the joint task force that got disbanded in 21? Cole nodded slowly. They were dirty, caught running side-ups out of Syria. Exactly. Guess who was funding them? The screen flashed a name. Blackfell Strategic Holdings, a shell company. Cole had seen it before, buried in mission files after their final op. The one where his team died. Rook's voice dropped lower. Blackfell owns over half of Caldwell's stake in the Silver Ridge corridor, through 3 layers of fake companies. And guess what else? He clicked again. A surveillance still appeared, grainy but clear. Men in tactical gear loading crates into an unmarked truck. Cole's breath stilled. They're the same ones, Rook said. Same unit. The mercs that ghosted your team in Shamal province. They were never fully disbanded, just repurposed. Cole stepped back. For a moment the room seemed smaller, the walls pressing in. His fingers twitched near the old scar on his shoulder. He remembered the heat, the dust, the radio going dead just before the bullets came, the silence after, the betrayal. They came back, he said. They never left. Rook replied. Cole turned away, pacing to the window. Outside, the mist clung to the glass. Somewhere beyond it, the men who killed his friends were now moving weapons through this valley, dressed as surveyors and foremen, backed by a corporation with ties deep enough to make everything disappear. They hurt Rex to get to me, Cole muttered. They were probing. Rook said, seeing if the ghost was still alive. Cole turned. His voice was sharp now. You think this was random? No, Rook said. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. You're the last name on their ledger. Clean up the mess. Cole looked at the screen again. A still frame showed a convoy moving through a side trail, one that cut across his property. They're using my land. Or trying to. You're in the way. Cole walked to the old bookshelf and pulled down a box wrapped in oilskin. Inside were printed mission briefs, dog-eared photos, and maps, things he wasn't supposed to keep. He spread them across the table. These are the same routes we ran logistics through in 18, he said. Same mountain access. They're using old spec-op trails to move hardware unnoticed. Rook scanned the documents. They recycled the entire operation. Because they think no one's watching. They're wrong. The laptop pinged. Another file opened. A drone photo of a new build site. Steel structures, no windows, ringed in fencing. Looks like a resort, Rook said. But why the need for thermal shielding and military-grade reinforcement? Cole stared at it. It's not a lodge, it's a vault. For weapons, or data, or bodies. Doesn't matter, it's built for war. The room went quiet. Rook finally spoke. We can blow the whistle. No, Cole said. They'll bury it. Call it a misunderstanding. Lock Rex in a kennel somewhere and slap a gag order on me. He turned toward the small monitor mounted in the corner of the cabin, connected to live security feeds from his property. The green-tinged night vision flickered. He wasn't running anymore. They killed my men once, Cole said, voice low. I won't let them kill him too. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing against the trees like distant footsteps. Inside, the ghost had returned, and this time he was done being silent. The rain came down in sheets, slicing through the dark like cold steel. Thunder rolled over the treetops of Silver Ridge, muffling the sound of men moving through the woods. But Cole wasn't listening to the storm. He was listening to the silence between the raindrops, the kind of silence that only came before contact. Inside the cabin, everything was ready. Cole knelt beside the entryway, checking the final tripwire, a low-tension wire strung across the base of the stairs, hidden in shadow. Behind him, Rook was securing a Claymore-style flash unit in the back. Hallway. It wouldn't kill anyone, but it would blind and disorient long enough for a shot to land. The floor plan of the cabin had been memorized, weapon placements rehearsed. Windows were covered. Fire lanes were marked. Weak spots had been fortified with sandbags and stacked wood. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a battlefield. And Cole knew this battlefield better than any man in the world. In the corner of the main room, Rex stirred on his blanket. Still wrapped in gauze, still weak, but awake. His breathing had grown stronger in the last 12 hours. Now his ears twitched, then lifted. A low, guttural growl rolled from deep in his chest. Cole stood. "They're coming." Rook checked his rifle and moved to the side window. 5 signatures northwest, tight formation, suppressed weapons. This isn't a bluff. "They never bluff twice," Cole said. He clicked off the lights. Darkness swallowed the cabin. Outside, the mercenaries moved through the trees like phantoms, dressed in black, faces hidden behind NVG goggles and balaclavas. They communicated in silent hand signals, sweeping the perimeter, flanking from both sides. Inside, Cole crouched behind the reinforced kitchen counter, eyes locked on the door. Rook had taken up the left flank near the rear window. Both men waited. Silent, breathing steady, trained. Then, the first tripwire snapped. A blinding strobe ignited near the east-facing wall, followed by a high-pitched frequency blast designed to disorient. One of the mercs screamed, clutching his ears. Cole moved fast, popping 2 rounds from his suppressed sidearm. One figure dropped. Another stumbled back into a snare trap, the wire pulling tight around his ankle and yanking him hard into the mud. Chaos erupted. The front door blew inward with a shoulder charge. 2 men burst in. One went left, the other straight. Cole ducked low, rose in one fluid motion, and fired twice. Both men crumpled before they cleared the kitchen. Rook flanked right, catching a third attacker as he tried to scale the back porch. His rifle barked once. Clean, surgical. The body dropped silently into the grass. From the ridgeline to the north, a crack of thunder that didn't come from the sky echoed across the woods. A sniper's shot. The merc closing in from the rear stumbled and fell, a dark hole in the center of his chest. From far off, a tiny glint of light flickered, just for a second. A mirror signal. Buckley. The old man hadn't just brought a rifle. He had brought a message that no matter how old you were, if you knew what war tasted like, you never forgot how to bite back. Inside, Cole moved through the shadows like smoke, collecting weapons from the fallen, checking pulse points. His breathing was calm, his mind quiet. This was where he came alive. Not because he wanted to, but because it was the only place the past made sense. Another flash went off in the hallway. Someone tripped the final trap. Cole sprinted toward the sound. One of the last mercs was staggering forward, blinded, weapon raised blindly. Then, a growl. Rex! He had risen. The shepherd limped forward, blood still staining his bandages, but his eyes were blazing. He stood between Cole and the intruder, head low, teeth bared. The man hesitated. Just long enough. Cole fired. The body dropped. And Rex, chest heaving, stood a moment longer before collapsing into Cole's arms. "You're supposed to be resting," Cole whispered, lifting the dog back to his blanket. Rook stepped into the room, rifle lowered. "That was 6. I count 6 bodies?" Cole nodded. "They underestimated the ghost." Rook gave a tired half-smile. "And the dog?" Outside, the rain slowed. The wind settled. The forest, just moments ago filled with shadows and violence, fell silent again. Not with peace, but with respect. A cabin in the mountains, wrapped in fog, standing tall after a storm. Blood in the mud. Spent casings on the floor, and the breath of a dog. Shallow but steady, rising and falling in rhythm with the man who owed him everything. Tonight, war had come to Silver Ridge, and it had left with fewer soldiers than it brought. The smoke still hung in the air like ghosts that refused to leave. Casings glinted on the cabin floor, blood mingled with rain on the porch, and the forest around Silver Ridge stood quiet, not out of peace, but exhaustion. The battle was over. The war had one more name to carve. Cole stood just outside the cabin, his shoulder bloodied, his rifle resting low but ready. Rook was inside, checking the last of the bodies. Rex lay on his blanket, head turned toward the open door, ears twitching with every gust of wind. His body was still weak, but his eyes hadn't lost their fire. The crunch of tires on wet gravel broke the silence. A black SUV pulled into the clearing, headlights cutting through the mist. The engine idled for a long moment. Then the door opened. Luke Caldwell stepped out, alone. He was dressed in a sleek raincoat and leather gloves, like he was arriving for a press conference, not a crime scene. His hair was slicked back, his jaw tight. He took 3 steps forward, then paused, eyes scanning the broken cabin. The bodies sprawled near the tree line. He smiled. Guess the mercs earned their pay. Cole didn't move. Luke stepped closer, more confident now, as if smelling victory. Can't say I'll miss you, Harris. You were a mistake from the start. You should have just taken the deal. From the shadows at the cabin's edge, Cole stepped forward, alive, dirty, bloodied, silent, but very much alive. Luke froze mid-step. The air seemed to suck itself out of the clearing. You hurt the wrong dog, Cole said, voice quiet. Luke stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own boots. You're supposed to be dead? Cole raised the rifle, eyes cold. So were my men. Luke's mouth moved, searching for words. Look, I didn't know. It wasn't me. I didn't. But you signed the orders. You funded the routes. You paid the men. Cole took another step forward. You thought war was paperwork and profit. Luke's knees buckled. Please. From the cabin, Rook emerged, holding a tablet. Got everything we need. Shipment manifests, internal comms, even video from their body cams. Cole nodded. He didn't shoot. He didn't have to. He stepped forward, disarmed Luke in a single brutal motion, and shoved him to the ground. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. Sheriff Elena Torres arrived 20 minutes later, sirens off. 2 deputies stood guard while she walked the perimeter, eyes wide, face pale. She had seen plenty in her time, but nothing like this. This wasn't a shootout, she said softly. This was a battlefield. Cole handed her the drive. Everything's on there. Weapons smuggling, covert ops, contractors tied to the same unit that ambushed my team. She opened the file and scrolled in silence, her jaw clenching. Where's Luke? Inside, cuffed to the stove. She looked at him. You want me to process this the normal way? Cole nodded once. I'm done being a ghost. Torres turned away, her voice rising as she ordered her team to secure the site. A call to state investigators. Then federal. She didn't question Cole's involvement. She'd seen enough. Rex had told her everything she needed to know, just by refusing to die. The rumble came low and fast, a deep whop 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 overhead. A black helicopter crested the ridge, emblazoned with the seal of the Department of Justice. It circled once, then hovered above the clearing. Ropes dropped, men in tactical vests fast roped down, silent and efficient. One of them knelt beside Rex, scanning his vitals. The dog's head lifted weakly. His eyes opened. His tail thumped once against the floor. He had heard the sound of backup. He had held the line. Cole knelt beside him, resting a hand gently against his flank. You did it, he whispered. You brought them here. Rex blinked once, slowly, and let his head rest again. The agents moved quickly. One secured Luke. Another handed Torres a warrant. The operation that had hid in plain sight for years collapsed in a single, quiet hour. As the sun broke through the clouds for the first time that day, casting golden light across the clearing, Cole looked up. The storm was over, but the cost had been real. Men had died, ghosts had returned, and one dog, broken, bruised, but still breathing, had changed the course of it all. He hadn't barked for food. He had barked for justice, and the world had answered. The late autumn wind rolled gently through the trees behind Dr. Levin's clinic, scattering dry pine needles across the gravel path. A single sunbeam cut through the thinning branches, striking the small rehab yard behind the building. A patch of fenced land, quiet except for the rhythmic scrape of paws dragging slightly through the soil. Rex was walking again. Slow, deliberate, but upright. His back leg still bore a brace. A thin scar stretched along his skull where fur had yet to regrow. But his head was up, his eyes clear and defiant. Every step looked like pain, but he took it. Cole sat on the bench just outside the gate, coffee in one hand, the other resting on the wooden cane he hadn't touched since his discharge. Dr. Mara Levin stood beside him. She didn't speak. She knew better than to fill this silence. From the parking lot, a car door shut. Sheriff Elena Torres walked up the path, carrying a folder and a small brown paper bag. Her boots crunched quietly in the gravel as she approached. "Figured you could use this," she said, holding out the bag. Cole took it, opened it, and gave the barest hint of a smile. "Hazelnut donuts? Fresh this morning," she said. "You're not the only one rebuilding." He nodded his thanks, then glanced toward the fence. Rex was nose-deep in a tuft of wild grass now, tail swaying gently like a metronome for the day's quiet rhythm. Torres watched him too, her voice softer. "He's got grit." "He's had it since day one," Cole replied. "That leg won't slow him down. It never did." She sat beside him. They watched in silence for a moment until she said, "Luke Caldwell pled guilty." Cole didn't react. He flipped. Fully. Handed over everything. Names, bank records, overseas accounts, the works. He knew once the feds got involved, there was no buying silence. Cole's jaw flexed. "Cowards usually talk loudest when the guns are gone." "Maybe," Torres said, "but thanks to him, they shut down 5 smuggling corridors. Blackfell's under federal review. Some of the guys you named, they're disappearing. Arrests, discharges, quiet removals." Cole nodded, eyes never leaving the rehab yard. "Why'd he do it?" he asked finally. Torres hesitated. Said he didn't know what Caldwell Industries had become. Claimed it was always his father's business. He was just the figurehead. Said he never expected the war to come here. Cole didn't laugh, but the edge of his mouth twitched. "He brought it." Torres looked down at the ground. "You know, if this ever goes to trial, you could—" "No." His tone was final. "I gave what I had. I'm not stepping back into that spotlight." She nodded, expecting that answer. Still, she said, "You're a hard man to thank." "I'm not here to be thanked." She followed his gaze again. Rex had reached the far corner of the yard and now turned, limping, yes, but turning under his own power. "They offered you a medal," she said. Cole shook his head. "You want to honor someone, honor him." They sat quietly again until the wind shifted, carrying with it the sound of hammering wood from somewhere near the trail. Torres turned. "What's that?" Cole stood, slipping the cane under his arm. "Buckley," he said. "Said he had something to finish." They followed the path through the edge of the trees, winding past moss-covered rocks and a clearing still bearing scars from the firefight, burn marks on trees, bullet holes in bark. And then they saw it, a sign, weathered wood, carved cleanly by hand, bolted into the earth with care. Ground zero where loyalty stood its ground. Buckley stood nearby, tightening a final bolt with slow, practiced turns. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Figured it shouldn't be forgotten," he said. "Not what happened. Not who stood up when others ran." Cole approached, looked at the words, and then back toward the cabin's silhouette in the trees. Rex, from a distance, let out one bark, sharp, clear, confident. The wind carried it over the trees, through the valley, and into the heart of the town that had once tried to bury its ghosts. Cole nodded once. "They tried to kill a memory," he said, "but they woke a legend." And behind him, the dog who wouldn't die stood tall, wounded, yes, but undefeated. The sun dipped low over Silver Ridge, staining the sky with streaks of copper and deep violet. The trees stood motionless in the cooling air, their branches silhouetted against the last light of day. Wind moved through the pines with a softness that hadn't existed here in months, as if the mountain itself was finally exhaling. On the cabin's front porch, Cole sat in a wooden chair, a flannel blanket across his lap, the warmth of his coffee seeping into his hands. Beside him, stretched out with his head resting just over the toe of Cole's boot, lay Rex. The old shepherd's fur had grown back over most of his scars, darker now with age, and his ribs had filled in. The limp remained, but there was strength in every breath. His ears twitched now and again with the sound of wind or distant bird song, but otherwise he was still, watching the woods like he always had. Cole reached down and brushed his hand gently over the dog's head. "You always knew when something wasn't right," he murmured, "even when I couldn't see it." Rex didn't move much anymore. He didn't have to. He had already done more than enough. The screen door creaked open behind them. Sheriff Elena Torres stepped out, holding 2 mugs. She handed one to Cole, then leaned against the porch railing, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the far ridge. "They're renaming the town square," she said after a moment. "Veterans Memorial Plaza. Ceremonies next week. Figured you'd want to know." Cole took a sip, the heat curling in his chest. Not much of a ceremony guy. "I figured," she said. "Still, people need symbols, reminders." He nodded, "so they don't forget who actually kept them safe." She looked at Rex. "Exactly." From inside the cabin, the small radio crackled to life. Someone had left it on the local station. A man's voice came through, steady, warm, filled with the practiced cadence of a small-town broadcaster who knew everyone by name. "Tonight we honor a veteran and his dog," the voice said. "Not just for what they did, but for what they stood for the reminder that courage doesn't retire, and that loyalty, real loyalty, lives long after the battle ends." Cole didn't speak. He just smiled quietly to himself and reached down again, running a hand through Rex's fur. "Good boy," he said softly. "Still guarding, huh?" Rex shifted slightly, letting out a low whine, not of pain, but of contentment. His eyes didn't leave the horizon. The sun finally vanished, giving way to the hush of twilight. Coyotes howled far off in the hills. The world, as it had been and would always be, kept moving. But here, on the edge of the trees, where blood had once stained the soil, peace had taken root. Cole leaned back in his chair. Rex rested his chin on the porch wood, still watching, still listening, still guarding. The screen slowly faded to black. Then one final line appeared in white letters. He didn't bark for food. He barked for the truth. What's your story with a loyal pet? If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in loyalty, in quiet courage, and in second chances. Subscribe to German Shepherd for more stories that honor the dogs who never stop protecting us, even when the world stops watching.